Good afternoon, a warm welcome to Where Knowledge Meets Process. We're delighted to be here. We're really thankful for your precious time and hope your day is going well so far. I will explain who we've got in view. You'll be able to see via the webcam. So there's myself, my name is Matthew, I'm one of the co-founders of Flow 10. We have Jane, also from Flow 10, and then kindly Paul and Gavin from PLP are with us today. And Paul has confirmed they're very busy, and therefore again really appreciate the time and the energy that's gone into both this now, but also the preparation towards it. In terms of the agenda, we in the next hour are going to be covering an initial keynote around the subject matter, which is how do we combine good quality knowledge and process within design practice. We're going to be then looking a little bit more into knowledge management. Jane will be running that session for 10 or so minutes, because I think in principle we're all familiar with running projects. We're understanding of the key and critical components of running projects, but I still believe whilst we know it's important, knowledge management is misunderstood in many ways, even though in real terms, day to day, we all manage knowledge with our practices. So that would be interesting to cover. We'll then hand over to PLP, who will be talking about their journey so far in terms of what they've been working on in this last number of months. And I'll be then showing an actual real life example. I would also add that between the keynote and the knowledge management session, we are running a short survey, and you'll be able to get involved using your mobile phones or logging into the website. So we'll be able to cover that off in a moment. That, of course, is going to get you involved, get you engaged in the topic, but we will have a Q&A session at the end as well as a number of other actions that you may want to pursue beyond the session. I think it's important to initially also explain who Flow 10 are. I think many of you that have joined will have some awareness of who we are, but there'll be some of you that this is your first engagement with us. So in summary, we're a technology platform. We're 5 years old as an organization, and we work with quite a number of the leading design and engineering and consulting practices in construction. And we also integrate with quite a few solutions that you may already be using, which you can see at the bottom there. And this, along with lots of other talks that we've done, are available on our website. So we will be able to share this, but of course you may want to look at other talks that we've done over the last number of years with other practices similar to PLP Architecture. So this is the bit where, if you would be willing, and I can guarantee this is straightforward because I've done it a number of times, whether you could go to mentimeter.com, if you Google it, one of the initial hits that comes up is Mentimeter with a code, or you can use your phone camera to be able to scan the QR code, and once there, you can see a thumbs up, which you can click to confirm that, that effectively you're happy with the system. And we have then simply two questions that we want you to get involved with. So I'll be doing just that now, making sure that I can log in too. But I think the guidance I would give when you get to this page is that on our travels in talking to you, we found that actually many of you will run, and this is the kind of key component, you'll call it different things, but you'll have a tracker, you'll have a project quality plan, you'll have a way of managing key project tasks related to your ISO standards and your quality management system. And we're fascinated to know what combination of things you use. So you can answer up to 6 of these, and this will give us an indication of what the sort of the leading technologies that are often in play actually are. So I'll wait a couple of moments longer and we'll then be able to see how this builds. We will also be sharing not just this video, but we're writing a guidance piece where this, amongst other aspects of the talk, will go into something that you'll be able to digest in more detail, because obviously we're not going to be able to do a lot of delving into the answers here, but straight after the session, Jane and I will be looking into the responses you've given. Okay, so thank you for that. I think that would certainly be partly expected. We're not going to see a big drop off in Excel usage. That is often what we see happening in terms of something that people have to follow and tick off what they've completed along the way. And indeed, often those spreadsheets then need to be collated and collected in order to provide your audits. Okay, the next question is one that is a little unfair because we've not got to some of this detail yet, but I just wondered whether any of you currently have a documented strategy for knowledge management within your practice. Again, thank you for that. Appreciate it very much. And I think that is going to back up really what we're talking about. So in terms of context, in terms of the landscape, we see that most design practices and consulting practices within the industry don't have a structured way to catalog a lot of knowledge. And indeed, when it comes to project compliance, a lot of the key components of the QMS and other accreditations or management procedures you have are not structured either. So combine that with a backdrop of quite a number of systems that are being used, an increase in compliance requirements around, say, the Building Safety Act, and I've seen also this increased demand around ISO accreditations that people are looking for now in terms of 19650, 14001, 27001, and of course 9001. We're a diverse team, largely, whether it be number of services that you run, a number of teams that are in existence, or the fact that many of us now work remotely from time to time, or indeed actually sometimes quite regularly, and we're busy. That's certainly something we've not seen tail off over these last years, and that creates, I think, some demands. And I think one of the demands, of course, around compliance is the fact that there are a number of stages to projects, a number of things that you want to take place. Now, this particular graphic is not designed to overwhelm you. Indeed, some of you would recognize it because it's the plan of work by REBA in terms of core tasks and the key processes, the core statutory processes that need to happen. And at the bottom there, I've added you'd have other management tasks that you want to take place. Now, whether you're running in a different geographical region or occupy and use a different number of stages, because of course, many of us have condensed these things down, the fact is there are things that need to happen along the project journey. And at the bottom there, we have this need to try and make sure that information is going in and out of this. So you will be running a place to keep your documents. You are running other project systems. You have got certain best practice materials, information that people need to use and templates when it comes to delivering these particular requirements. And yet none of that's really connected and joined up. And so again, this is the essence of the talk. It's how do we make sure that people understand their requirements of a project, are actually supported with quality knowledge and supporting materials, but how does that information then effectively go and travel out of your projects into your core databases, your core knowledge hubs, your key systems, to make sure that the next project is successful? How do we continually improve effectively? So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Jane, who's going to be putting a bit more context behind knowledge management within design and consulting practice.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, so I'm going to start discussing what is knowledge management. Before I even get into what knowledge management is, I just want to sort of draw your attention to this slide. So this is all about knowledge. Now, I believe this is probably where a lot of people on this call are today, and again, a lot of people in the industry are. So we know we have knowledge, but obviously we have many sources of it. I think obviously looking at the results of the Mentimeter before, obviously that highlights where some of that knowledge is. So whether that is in an Excel spreadsheet, sometimes it may just be knowledge in somebody's head. But what is quite difficult is to know where that knowledge sits. So what is the process to actually find that knowledge? So if you think of a typical scenario, if you're working with an environment, you've got an environmental issue where you're working with some hazard materials, you know you've done this before, but where and how do you find information? So I think it's key to realize that we have knowledge, but it's not necessarily always managed. And obviously that can lead to many issues, whether that is the time that's taken, obviously delay to projects, and also do you actually know what that knowledge is? And if you're missing any knowledge, do you have everything that you need? So with that in mind, I'm going to take you through the key components of what knowledge management is. Now, there are 7 key components. Now, the most vital component I've got at the top is people. So the people that are involved. So whether obviously you're expert, you've got experts in each subject, your knowledge workers, they are key to knowledge management. And obviously why? So obviously taking you through then into the processes. So obviously, what is the process? So this is the process that is given to actually capture that knowledge, so create that knowledge. So the people are needed, obviously, and that obviously, but they need the process in order to be able to create and capture that knowledge. Now, what technology plays a critical role in that? So obviously, providing the users and the people with the tools in order to support those knowledge related activities. So in order to be able to capture and share that knowledge. But just with technology and people and processes, you need the culture. So culture can either support or hinder knowledge management within an organization. Without obviously a culture of a sharing culture, it doesn't work, and it's key. It's key to the whole process and the whole delivery of good knowledge management. Then we look at obviously the strategy. I'm saying when I talk about strategy, I'm saying make sure that it aligns with what your organization overall business strategy is, what are the goals and the objectives. So whether that is to reduce risk, if you've got a target to reduce risk by a particular within a particular time frame, or some sustainability goals. So as long as that aligns with your strategy, your knowledge management, you've got some key objectives. That is also obviously that then brings us into our measurement. So you've got your strategy, you know what you need, you've got the knowledge, you've got the culture, you've got the technology, but then how do you measure it? So that is important to be able to know how you can measure the success of knowledge management. So being able to have matrix and again, strategy is key to that. So did you achieve the goals, why and how? And then the last one in the list here is governance. So this is referring to the policies and procedures and guidelines that guide knowledge management practices. So it does include sort of the roles and responsibilities for managing that knowledge, because obviously you want that knowledge to be recorded in a particular way, because you're always thinking about what you want out of the system. So how it's put in obviously can improve obviously the output. So each of these 7 components make up knowledge management as a whole. But then obviously if we're thinking, well, how do practices that actually use this. So I've just put some examples of how knowledge management is used within the AEC market. So the first, obviously, we've got capturing, sharing. Now, I think that obviously that is key, but you've got to think why. So you're ensuring that the knowledge is not lost. Now, if you think of knowledge as in person, because you can have experts in each field, what happens if that person retires or leaves the organization? So ensuring that that is captured in real time is key. Because remember, people don't know what they know, and they also don't know they don't know as such. So recording it in real time is key. And then obviously best practices. So ensuring that the same processes are followed each and every time. So consistency across all your projects. So using that to improve your overall project outcome. Obviously, we then have lessons learned. So recording lessons learned as we go along. So capturing that information, and that can include what went well, what didn't go so well, what you would improve, because any tips and tricks. Because remember, sometimes, and again, in anything that we're doing, sometimes you think you might have gone down a process, and when you get to the end, you think, if I knew then what I know now, I may have done this differently. And that's what lessons learned. It's allowing you to learn from others. And that leads to innovation. So it can lead to new design ideas, new materials, new construction techniques. Because again, we're not reinventing the wheel each time. We're building on the knowledge we've got rather than going back to the beginning each and every time. And that brings us to the quality. So our quality control procedures. So again, help us identify areas for improvement, because obviously not everything is perfect every time. So I think it's key to learn that, to put those quality control processes in place and identify areas for improvement and improve them, implement them. And last on this list is risk management. Now, sharing risk data is key in order to identify ways to mitigate risk. I think that is a given. But what you would like over time, and I would say purely over time, is that issues occur, but each issue is a new issue, each risk. So you're mitigating the risks each and every time. So that's a very good strategy and a good target that a lot of organizations have. So overall, what it's used for, to improve project outcomes is a given, reduce risks and foster innovation. So always looking to improve, making yourself become more effective, efficient and competitive in today's rapidly changing environment. So that is what obviously AEC, how it's actually being used today. So you think about, go back to what we said before, we've got all this knowledge, and now we know what knowledge management is, and we know what it's actually being used for. But just the easiest way to summarize knowledge management, if you're starting off, is it comes as in 4 pillars. So we have the creation, application, sharing and storage. Now, each of these are required for project excellence, and each of them all are their own pillars that hold up knowledge management. So creation, if you think creation as in creating the knowledge in the beginning, sharing that knowledge, and basically always looking for improving the quality of the work. Then application is how we're applying that knowledge. So if we're using it to problem solve, reduce risks, and innovation. Sharing is all about the culture. So we've mentioned it throughout, is having that culture. So it's all about the people and the culture in order to achieve this project excellence. And the last is storage. So storage being how the tools, so the software, the tools that are provided in order to capture that information. Now, just before I finish, I've got a lot of things on the screen here, and people may ask, okay, but why? How? So increase productivity, how? Just as a key thing. Well, if you just go from the very beginning here, so we're going to control that and store that knowledge. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to improve the design quality because we're always learning. So if you remember, we're learning from other people. Therefore, we're going to increase efficiency, which is given. Better decision making, that is key. Obviously, that's going to lead to, clearly over time, you're going to improve your productivity. And then again, going further again, it's going to increase your productivity. So again, ensuring that you improve your project outcomes over and over again. So you should only ever get better each and every time, and ensure that there's only one version of the truth of all this information. So I'm just going to pass over to Paul and Gavin from PLP Architecture.
Thank you both. Just check, you can still hear me, Matthew, okay? Great. So I'll just start with a quick outline of PLP. So we are an international architectural practice, and we are predominantly based in London, but we also have offices in Tokyo and Singapore, with an active staff presence in both Milan and Amsterdam also. Next slide. So we're approximately 150 staff globally. We've got myself, Paul, who's head of graphics, and Gavin with me, who's head of design technology. And we both led the implementation for the new intranet, along with other specialist departments that help define the map for the site. So our previous intranet was very limited on information for staff, and it had little to nothing on projects, our sharing of any practice knowledge really. There was no real single place to source information for staff. We already had several databases, but none of them were connected or pushing information out to the wider office. So we had Open Asset, which we use for our image library. We've got Rapport, which is our staff database. And then we use Salesforce as our project database. And we didn't have any kind of database of project documents. Instead, all of our project documents were just being held in folders on drives, and most of the time not accessible to any staff at all. So regarding replacing the internet, we did meet with several providers that offered varying types of products, some of which were offering different kinds of integrations that didn't really suit our needs. But we also met with an existing Flow 10 customer to discuss their process and experience in working with Flow 10. Next one, go. So, having looked at several options for creating a new intranet, we were drawn to Flow 10 as we felt like it really created a centralized dashboard for all of our existing databases. We had early conversations with them that was positive, and we really felt that there was a relationship we could have with Flow 10 where what we wanted could help kind of evolve the product also. So, you know, and they're specialists in AEC industry, as it says on there, so that was quite key for us. Next one. So we set up a timeline for this, where we had a 6 months period for trying to start the project to completing the project. So phase 1, we kept the development team small, so we just had 5 people within the office. We felt that was a good number to keep it broad enough for the whole office to get their needs across, but also not too big that it would slow the progress down, as some of these things tend to do. We worked closely with Flow10 to create the integrations with the existing databases and curating which fields of information that's going to be pushed over to the intranet. And Flow10 were great in working with integrating Salesforce, which, if I'm right in thinking back, that was the first time we'd done a Salesforce integration, which was really good that we managed to get that across. So then once we had the visual templates in place and built the structure of the site, we started to collate and organize in the initial content. And that was in phase 3. And we started to bring in other heads of departments to be able to do that with us, so that the team at this stage started to grow a little bit bigger. Phase 4, when we had most of the content in place and everything structured as we set up in our vision, we felt like we was in a position to set a launch date. With that, it kind of put pressure on us to understand what outstanding items there were and to just iron out any user issues that we might have had with certain parts of the tech. Which then brings us to the launch date and going forward into phase 5, which is pretty much where we probably consider ourselves to be now as well. In that it's live, it's launched, and we now have an admin group of 10 people who regularly update certain areas of the site so that we can keep it up to date and fresh as much as possible. So then it came to deciding on a name. Now, we were quite keen to make it feel a lot more broader than just an intranet. So we came up with the idea of naming it PLP Live. We used it to make it feel like an up-to-date source of all the studio's activities. We wanted it to be, it was important that all staff felt included in what was happening now and an open source for all the knowledge. And then with that, we felt it should hold, true to our branding of our current site and all of our documentation that we use. So we worked with Flow10 to customize the graphics, fonts, titles, page templates. But at the same time as us doing this, it was important that we still use as much of the core products as possible. We didn't want to make anything too bespoke that future updates to Flow10 wouldn't be able to be implemented to our site. So we were kind of balancing that in a cautious way. So here you can see on the screen we used, we used very simple templates where text remained in a consistent position, images were in consistent places. But at the same time, we had 3 columns underneath where we'd be able to make things slightly more bespoke. But we set these templates up so they kind of structured a more rigid page to page as you go through the site. You always knew where you were. And then the next one. So in terms of site map, again, we wanted to keep this quite simple. So we had a top level menu which clearly breaks down the areas that we needed on the site, being knowledge, projects, people, and support. And then under that, you can see the second level where it can expand and continue to grow with the intranet. And this was a lot more based around knowledge and departments. And then again, within those, there are further sub-menus. But I'll pass over to Gavin and he can show you some of the pages in use.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'll just talk through some of the pages in more detail and how our templates have been applied. So the 4 headings at the top, we tried to keep the navigation of the site simple, and we went through quite a few iterations of this, but what we landed on finally was our knowledge section. We have a knowledge homepage, which is effectively our homepage, which brings together aspects of all different pages from the site. Projects, which self-explanatory, people, it's our staff side, and then our support side as well. So I'll delve into each of these. First is the knowledge homepage. So we've tried to keep everything very graphical and much more in line with what you'd expect from any kind of industry website, with news feeds, So this actually pulls together content from a lot of different parts of the website so that the content is kept fresh, as Paul said, and it kind of rotates. So it sets as everyone's default homepage on their web browsers. So every time they log in, there's hopefully something new there that sparks some interest. We have key links across the top on the white band. We have events, practice news, and then one of the formats that we were very keen on, which Flowten did some development for us on, was this grid format, which is lower down the page. So this is actually posts, articles, some of it's talks that we have in our office, articles we've generated ourselves. And then this is the common component that sits within all the knowledge pages so that there's fresh content arising all the time from all the different departments. This is another one in the knowledge section, which just shows how our graphic template has been applied and adapted slightly differently for each page. So we have some text, we keep it very graphical, we include key contacts. So key driver for this site was just so people know who to speak to. If they can't find the information, they know the people to speak to access the knowledge that they're looking for. And then scrolling further down this page, again, just more key links that people might need, and then the latest section at the bottom, which is just all the latest posts from this section. So next one, this is again within the knowledge pages, and this is design technology and BIM, which I manage. And the key thing to highlight here was the menu system at the top. So we went through quite a few different options when we were developing the site for this, and I think we were hoping that we'd have some sort of mega menu format at the top, but we found a nice workaround because navigation was really important because people need to be able to find things they're looking for quite easily. So within each of these pages, wherever we have these submenus along the white band at the top, we've created templates for these. So if they're updated, we can very quickly just import those back into the pages. It's just easier for us to manage it. And then scrolling down through the page, again, key links. So in this section, it's LinkedIn Learning, where we have a lot of our internal training videos, and then a latest section, which is all documents and news articles. The next section within the sitemap is projects. This is what our projects homepage looks like. And again, it was important that it was very graphical. So Flowten did some work for us on this, and this is pulling together all our hero images from open assets. We have a lot of information being pulled from Salesforce once I delve into the project pages. But one of the key things with knowledge aspects of the site, we wanted to give everyone access to project documents, which was lacking somewhat before. So if you look down the filters on the left-hand side, we add tags to each of the projects when we have specific documents available through those, as well as geographic searches as well. So people can target in on specific things they're looking for. As well as that, we have a map in here, which again, Flowten did some work for us just to simplify this format. This is pulling coordinates. I think we enter those manually inside Flowten. And it just gives another way of our staff being able to find projects in different localities. And then once you click into one of the project pages, you can see all the text information is coming from Salesforce. We have all our Flowten tags at the top right-hand side, which there's no limit to these. We just add as many as we possibly can to each project. And then scrolling down on the right-hand side, you can see a kind of list of documents. This is a standard format for every project page, and we have 5 categories that documents go into, and this just links to SharePoint folders. So it means we can be very loose with how we add information to these. We can keep the templates looking the same, but in the background we can have 20 folders if we want, full of different information. So it makes it more manageable to more people and doesn't require much specialist knowledge. The next section, just very quickly, is our people page. So this is coming from a mixture of rapport for all the text information, and our staff images are managed through Open Asset. And we've included the filters here are generated from rapport, so in our staff database. So it was very important that people know who to go to for technical mentors, as one example on the left, and then also their seniority and kind of rank within the company and which departments. And then the last section, just mindful of the time. This is very similar to the knowledge section, but the key thing here is that it's not as refreshed. So the content is a bit more fixed. We have a whole range of pages. So this is our practice and HR page. We have an office map with kind of key information. Again, it's all part of the knowledge system, so people know where people sit in the office, who to go to, which department is where. A lot of it's for new starters, but they're the ones that need to feel the most supported. And lastly, again, within that section, just showing another application of our graphics template on our graphics page, with a picture of Paul on there. So the last slide, which I'll just talk through quickly, is the admin roles. So again, we went through quite a few iterations with this and worked closely with Flow 10 to develop some kind of roles and responsibilities in the system that we thought worked for us. The first one is post and events. So this lets our admin team within the office add news articles and manage events that we have going on in and out of the office. The project staff is a much broader group because this lets, it's all senior staff within the office, and it lets them assign staff members to each project. So if they're on the system and they're looking through it, they can just help ensure that the information on there is up to date. And then, as Paul said previously, our kind of core admin team at this point is 10 people. So it ensures there are multiple contributors and just helping keep things fresh and up to date.
Well, Gavin, Paul, thank you. Appreciate it. It's very generous of you to share what you have, and I know that for many who are in attendance, they'll have found that fascinating for certain. I'll just share my screen now. Just bear with me. Let's make sure it's the right monitor. Jane, can you see my desktop in the background with all the buildings? Yeah.
I can.
So,
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so I thought I would just expand on some of the elements that Paul and Gavin were covering there. And again, thinking very much along the lines of how do we get information of quality at the right times to the right people to get the right outcomes. So a couple of additional scenarios before we go into some Q&A is one, and it was touched on, how do we have a landing page for the practice that connects what is already valuable information? It just happens to be in a number of different systems, or you're not sure where to go. So for a lot of our clients, the landing page is an environment in which live feeds are coming in from other databases, and there's a number of common ones out there that a number of you will be using. In addition, the system can update you on news that you might be interested in, because the tagging solution within the platform can enable people to be fed information, whether that be pushed to them practice-wide, or because they're in a certain area of the practice, or indeed they can follow certain tags. So things like guidance and articles, or maybe the events that are going on, you may want to be aware of, say, modern methods of construction, or you might want to get policy information to everybody. So for example, we have reminders, which can give a traffic light system to make sure people do certain key things. We also have a reading list solution. So if you're involved in the quality management within your practice, you may want to make sure that new starters or key information that's changed makes its way through to this reading list environment, so people can see certain things such as required reading that they need to look at, or indeed they may want to follow or bookmark other information that exists. It's also important that you can delve in effectively to the system for searching. So for example, you may want to look for a topic such as fire safety, and then that can pull out key projects, posts, events, pages, materials that can help you. And similar to some of the other screens that were being presented previously by Gavin, it can enable you to filter down via tags and the keywords to find what you're looking for. In terms of project, it's a case of then how do we make sure that some information isn't just going to people when they search for it, but how do we make sure it actually lands with them when we need them to look at it? And that's where we go into a project setting, in addition to the screen that Gavin was showing previously, which can summarize the project and summarize the key documents, we have a tracker. Now, an overwhelming percentage of you said that Excel was being used currently to track projects. Others will be making use of either general systems, and we've seen a rise of those in terms of cloud-based systems that exist for general purpose use. When during the pandemic, we needed to make sure people were doing key tasks. And some of you are using the general project accounting systems or project management systems for tracking key things. In addition to knowledge sharing and connecting information, Flow10 have put and continue to put a lot of investment in this area, because what we're wanting to do is to make sure people are aware of responsibilities, to connect in to the data you have, to intelligently build the work stages and tasks that need to happen, to assign them to people, often automated again, based on your project teams, so that you can then encourage people to provide the documents. You can encourage people to engage with these tasks. So for example, I have here, actually it's with Nathan, but you can see incomplete task, health and safety, CDM. If I click on that, what we're actually seeing is a form, which is asking me to provide information, but we're also being presented with a web page. And that web page can then take people to individuals in the practice who can help. Key areas of your knowledge area. It may give you links to other example projects that are similar. It would give you key templates that should be used to complete this task. And that's where I think we have this situation often where your trackers and your key compliance tasks are entirely separate from your knowledge. And so we want a situation which collects that information, presents it, and helps people. Now, indeed, it may be that you've got great knowledge in another system. That's fine. You could connect it into these pages. It may be that you've got, or it will be that you've got an area where you file documents, and this isn't another repository. When you provide documents into here, they will automatically be routed through to your either file share for the project or SharePoint. We can publish this information into those solutions. So for example, if we were to look at this design program that needs to be dealt with, if I was to provide a document, I could drag and drop it in, I could provide the link. If I'm using certain PIM systems, we have an embedded set of options where you can actually link in via this. So if some of you, have Deltec or Newformer, there's some solutions there that we can provide as additional support. But if we were to then file this program and complete the task, not only do we all know that that's been dealt with, we can use this tracker to be able to gain access to this file again. So I can open it via this environment, so I'm less confused about where something might be. But in addition, that file has been placed into the program folder for this project, whether that be on the server or whether that be in your project document management system, or whether that be into SharePoint. So we're not double handling, we're just providing a prompt and a way of capturing. We can also capture other information. So I explained at the start, we're wanting to provide knowledge during the process. I provided an example previously where I was looking at health and safety tasks that was providing me with useful content. But sometimes actually you need to ask people to provide data or extra information. So for example, in this task, I've been asked to provide the building height. And that is important to us because from a professional indemnity insurance perspective, we want to have a record of our building heights. Some of you I know are responsible for sustainability or for MMC. And again, we can have key information being asked along the project journey. Maybe for marketing, you want to know whether a case study can be done or whether a site visit is due. We can drive dates automatically. So once a task has been completed, we can then insist that another task, follow-up task, is dealt with down the line as an offset. So there's quite a lot of capability there. I think in summary, before I leave this page, understand that projects can be varied even within your own practices. So both your knowledge environment and your project management solution in terms of tracking needs to flex. So some of our clients only have a couple of things that need to be dealt with, but they're really important. Others will have larger in terms of number of scheme tasks that need to be looked at, and that can of course vary. So I think whether you're doing, if you're a building consultant that does some project management or surveys, there's still a critical need to know, has the survey taken place? Have we issued the building survey? If you're an architect practice or engineering practice and you're going to be going all the way through to in use, then of course you're going to then need to try and make sure your quality management system is baked in and give them the best practice materials and the support they need to deal with those tasks. And that's kind of then flipping on its head also a way of auditing. So within our solution, and any good solution such as this, you need to be able to quickly identify where knowledge is missing or where project tasks haven't been dealt with. And often these things are actually either not done or they're done through a lot of manual effort to visit project teams, project leaders, and find out whether things have happened. But we can see here straight away that certain projects need attention. We can see that certain items haven't been dealt with. And again, these particular items are clickable tasks that would take you to that page to deal with said task. So here we have to find appointment. I'll provide the type and I'll say it's a bespoke appointment. I've completed that. But interestingly, if we go back into the project, you can see that another new task has been added now. So that has been completed, but now we need the insurer to approve the new terms because it's a bespoke contract. And our quality management system and our good management techniques suggest that we've got to do certain things on the outcome of certain things. So that can all be intelligently crafted and created. So a lot of food for thought there. I think there's probably just two factors I would touch on that, and some of these I know PLP make good use of in the knowledge environment. One is to make sure that you can track not just whether key project tasks have been dealt with, but actually look at who's engaging generally in your system. So who's, what are the key terms that people are searching for? Who's providing the content? Which projects are being engaged with the most? These sorts of things can be telling. You need to be able to work out whether people are finding what it is they're searching for. Indeed, you also want to make sure that the information is being updated regularly. So one of the items that we have is that any of the pages that you create can have a delegated responsibility. So this digital design page is linked to Calvin Bosch. Calvin is responsible for making sure that this page is up to date. And I think that's so vital, and one that perhaps might lead into some questions in this next section for Q&A about how to maintain the solution. And with PLP here, we can find out in real terms what's being done within their practice too. So let me just make the prompt. We now have a Q&A session. So one of the clear and obvious restrictions or limitations of a webinar is that it's often one way. We're talking, you're listening, but I think this is the opportunity to raise any questions you might have, and I'll chair this section, but there may be then a willing taker for the question. So please fire away. You should be able to see in your webinar interface the questions section where you can then post anything you might want to ask. Okay, so the first one we have is for PLP. I think it's what do you plan to do next? You mentioned the phase. I think you said phase 5. Where the sort of where's the thinking taking you now in terms of what you need to be looking at more?
I think we launched last September, and we're really just refining it at the moment. What's already there. We have a few development requests in with Flow 10. So one of those is the development of the calendar, because at the moment it's quite linear, sequential, and we'd like more of a kind of Outlook style calendar, potentially linking into people's calendars, because at the moment we manage events through Outlook invites separately, and also attendee lists that we manage through Flow 10. So it's a bit of a hybrid at the moment. We have looked at the dashboard, project dashboards, and also a document management system, but they're very much downstream for us at the moment. I think it's just refining what's there for the first year at least. That's the plan.
That leads on, I suppose, to yourself a little bit, Jane, doesn't it, in terms of your role within Flow 10 and researching and investigating more about certain areas that we need to then respond to and develop more.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So over the coming months, I will probably have a sit down with yourselves, Paul and Gavin, but obviously as well as all our other customers. So what my role predominantly is really sitting in between the product and customers. So ensuring obviously the product is being developed, and we're always looking ahead for trends in the market, but also working with the customers for improvement as well. So making sure listening to you, bringing that back to the table, back to the board, and obviously getting some of those items onto the development plan.
Jane, okay, so we have a question relating to the management side of it. So PLP have mentioned 10 admins. Are these solely for Flow 10 management? Could this be managed by one member of admin? It's probably one that we can all partly answer, but just in terms of your thoughts, Paul and Gavin, on that point.
I wouldn't advise one person doing it unless it's pretty much a full-time role. Personally, I think by having a few of us that are responsible for lots of areas of it, it keeps it moving quicker. None of us full-time knowledge management within the office. This is just a part of our other roles. So if potentially if you're full-time responsible for the intranet, then it might work, but it hasn't from our side.
I think we based our management around empowering a certain number of people to be able to build pages and understand all the graphical side of it. And then we have content providers, so the kind of second tier, content providers that are actually actively engaging with the intranet and adding posts and documents onto it. And then a third tier, which is other people that contribute to it but don't touch it. So that content then gets fed through the admin group to either build new pages or add posts and format the content for them. And it seems to be working for us well for now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think recognised that falling on one person's shoulders doesn't relate to a good outcome, because traditionally and often that person would be in an IT role or a marketing role, and of course they would never be able to update all the various topics anyway. They would have to source that information. So there's always going to be a joint effort, whatever way you go about it. But I think it's about probably little and often, isn't it? It's trying to have it in a daily routine for those involved. I think we in terms of our experience as Flow 10, different practices have different ways of doing it. I think the only fear we have is where it just falls on one person's shoulders, and it's not going to evolve in the right direction with one person trying to do everything.
I think for us, that approach would just be too risky as well. If that person leaves the company, then there's a lot of knowledge and just like you say, that daily routine, little and often of just the habit of updating things would be lost.
Yes,
it should be on multiple people.
Yeah, we've got a question from Daniel. Thank you. This question relates to already using a solution that some of you may know of called Newformer for action items, and we therefore might not need Flow 10 for this area. So, and the answer was, would it be possible to have selectivity in terms of not using that and yet not having to pay for something that's not being used? So the answer to that, Daniel, is Flow 10 is modular. You don't have to use the action items. We call it Project Tracker. In Flow 10, you could just focus on the knowledge side, which is entirely fine. I would, however, say that it's always worth having a conversation. We have other clients that did do that, and there's a talk separately on our website from Scott Brownrigg, who use new format and Flow 10 in terms of our project tracker. So it's probably worth a bit more of a conversation. Anne has asked a couple of questions. So this was to do with, I hope it's a yes, because we can all go home otherwise and have that bottle of wine, which is, have you seen improvements in staff knowledge? And if so, how much?
I would say that's for us, yeah. Anecdotally, yes, for sure. That's just through feedback from staff. We have some development requests in to improve the metrics, because one thing we are interested in doing is just identifying trends. So not just usage statistics over a period, but actually looking at the trends over our first year, I think will be when we're actually start to measure the success of the platform. But yeah, certainly just from comments, now people are not having to ask senior members of staff to access folders to find certain documents. They just have access to what they need. So that does, manual requests have reduced, but we don't have any hard measurements to say yes or no at this point.
No, although the analytics are there, and that's again where we're continuing looking to build more to give you that trend over time, to see that actually more engagement's taking place, to give you an ability to start to really understand the behavior of people and the information that they need. So again, that's something that we're wanting to invest in and look at increasingly too, because the solution has a part to play in giving that detail. Darren asks, which is a Flow 10 question really to do with the project tracker, whether there are different views. So we looked at the view related to a set of things that needs to happen by work stage. So the answer is yes, there are different views. We just didn't look at them. So the question asked was, can it be viewed as a timeline Gantt chart or a project task board? The answer is both yes. There is a Gantt view, and there are certain project task boards. There is a need, I think, with all the environments, whether it be to do with knowledge or the project tasks, to really have a user story to work out who is this individual logging on and what they need to see. Because in some cases, people actively manage projects. In other cases, they oversee multiple projects beyond themselves directly. Indeed, there's some people who have certain types of tasks and that they want to view. So it might be that I'm in finance and I want to see a whole combination of finance related things, etc. So there's a fair few there. We're also, again, this is where Jane will be able to advise a bit more. And we've got our user group coming up where we're going to be announcing certain capabilities. But one of the ones that we're working on is towards enabling people to also not just have reports or views that we create, but create your own in Power BI, for example, which some of our clients use quite a lot, where they want to connect data in and aggregate that data to be able to do the sort of configured reports that their practice needs. Neil has asked, how long did it take to develop and implement the solution you were happy with, and how quickly did personnel make use of it?
Shall I open up our slideshow again? Yeah, we did have it on the slides, but it was quite brief. Might have missed that one.
It's okay. I've made you a presenter again.
Yeah, I'm just finding.
We've only got 1 minute, so then I'll do a wrap up.
Yeah, so I think phase one was just our small team that really just, it took half of our development time of 6 months was just really understanding what tools were in front of us, building the site, understanding how to organize it, how to navigate it, how we can play with all the tools in there to link different pages together. So that was half of our development time. And then another month was really once we'd set that and just build it and stress test it. And then we started extending out after 4 months to other content contributors across the practice to really start populating things, and then going into a final outstanding items before launch. But setting that launch date really focused everyone in, both on our side and on Flow 10, think that was a really good exercise.
Yeah, I think that phase 2 was really, it was much quicker than you would expect, because it was quite straightforward in terms of build once we'd done the background work.
Thank you, guys. And thanks everyone for your questions. Can you see my screen where it is a white background?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just a sort of final thank you, really. We'll be over the next day or two giving you access to the recording. I think just two or three key things. One is if you're a client, if you've not already registered to our user group on the 11th of May, we're available and willing, of course, to have independent conversations with you all within your studios or online. And in terms of an expo, we're attending DCW on the 17th and 18th of May. So if you're going to be there, do come and say hello. It'd be great to see you. And then finally, again, just a big thank you. There's on our website a number of clients that you'll recognise, and you'll see some of them at the bottom there. And I'm sure that, like PLP, who visited one of our clients to talk, it was a vital part of the decision process to move in these directions. And again, there may be practices down at the bottom there you're familiar with that you can lean on. I know we're a small interconnected sector, so please do that. And if you need any support in that, please let me know. So thank you again. Really appreciate the time, and have a good rest of day. Thanks all.